Hello, welcome back to another segment in a Spiritual Ascension, my 5-year personal journey. In this video, I'm going to talk about relationships, friendships, and how once you start on this journey, everything changes. So, and hopefully you've been following along since the start, the intro. Um, Video, because if you kind of come into this in the middle, you'll kind of lose track of where I last left off. So I've been talking about 2019, which a lot happened in that year, but it was also seemed like it was a preparation year. I Because at the start of my journey was in 2020. And if you remember back to 2020, what happened in 2020, it was so weird how everything coincided. My journey started um, along with the international um, epidemic that we were going through. And it was like since 2017, um, my ancestors in spirit giving me all these instructions on things I needed to do and to accomplish. 2019 became kind of a year to kind of get all these things in order, but also prepping me for when that time would start. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional just thinking about that time and what my family and spirit had come through to tell me these instructions. I wanted to talk a little bit mostly in this video about relationships. So, as I had mentioned earlier, that year I had gone to Japan to see my oldest son, who had been in the Marines for, I think at that time, I don't know, maybe 15 years, almost 15 years. He was stationed in Okinawa, and I didn't understand how pivotal that would be. Since he had left home, um, I didn't really get to see him as much. He had been in the wars and had come back home. He had gotten married and um, but things seemed to have changed. He was becoming his own man and, was moving up in rank and had his own life. And I know for myself, the way I had been raised and not having really a say in what I wanted to believe and how to think and everything like that. I wanted to give my kids an opportunity to live their own lives. So, and I had said also that I was starting to kind of um, put my business together. So I was meeting a lot of new people and new, especially women who I was collaborating with. And I was in my personal year 3, which talks about collaboration and community and communication, which was becoming a big aspect at that point of, doing a lot of networking. And I had formed a group of women entrepreneurs for us to meet on a monthly basis just to keep ourselves updated. So back in the late 1990s, I had met my best friend at that time, which I considered her my best friend, and I thought she had considered me her best friend. Um, but there was something about her. She had this wonderful, open spirit about her. And I was so introverted and she was so extroverted that we kind of balanced each other. And I probably, seeing now the things that I've learned, put her more on a pedestal than I should have. And I didn't want to see any of her flaws or anything. She had gone through, um, she had helped me many times, things I was going through with my ex-husband and children's situations. And even when my son had passed away, um, she was there for me, dealing with um, other relationship situations that were not good for me. She helped me through those situations also. And of course, we practically, it was a kind of relationship where you talk to that person every day and just update each other. What are you doing? And so forth and so on. Um, she had asked me to go on a cruise with her the following year in 2020. And I hadn't been on a cruise since I had lived with my parents. So I was like, oh, wow, that's great. Let's do it. So we were going to be roommates on the cruise. And I was really excited. And we had put our money down towards, down payment. And one day we were talking and she said, but also knowing that over the last couple of years, I had noticed a little bit of a distance between us. And I was kind of doing my own life, and I was in New York, and she still lived in New Jersey, but she also worked for one of the top designer handbag companies in New York. And I, so we saw each other on occasion in the city and still got together, but there was more of a distance between us. Um, One day we were talking, and she said to me, we're going on this trip, but I don't want us to be all up under each other. And I kind of, was taken aback by that because like her and I were kind of like you say, white on rice or thick and whatever the sayings goes, Bonnie and Clyde, we were so tight. And I don't know, why would she say that to me? Like even during, I think it was like a 10-day cruise, or even during that time, if she wanted to go do something that I didn't want to do, if I wanted to do, like, there was not any need to proclaim that a year beforehand, you're on a cruise and say, I'm going to go do this day, so forth, if you're going to do something separate, whatever like that. So I was kind of really taken aback by that and really kind of hurt because she had kind of never had done that to me before. And she had gone through a couple years back, about 5 years before that, had gone through a really hard separation with her husband of many years. And I noticed a change in her from that emotional change. And there may have been a feeling too of things that she hadn't dealt with emotionally during that time that were still affecting her, but maybe her lashing out on other people because of that. Um, Probably something of self-worth. And also another thing, when I had finished my psychic skills class, we did a little graduation ceremony. And he said, you can invite one or two family members to attend. And I couldn't think of anyone, within my family that I would have attend, because everyone, of course, in my family was totally against what I was doing. And when I thought about her, was she would always have been there for me in any kind of situation. She had kind of turned into this person where her ego would have wanted all the spotlight to be on her instead of it being there for me. Not to say she wouldn't say, oh, yeah, Marilyn did a great job, so forth and so on, but it would become more about her. And I knew that, and I could see that as we had kind of gone through the last couple of years. And I was proud of what I had accomplished, and I didn't want to take away from that. So I had decided not to invite her. Also, I know when it took me a couple of months to even tell her that I had these abilities. And I noticed the first thing she said to me when I said, my father had come through and told me that, I needed to bring forth my abilities once again. Um, she's like, well, how come you didn't tell me about this? Because I had known, I don't know, 3 or 4 months before that. And I was kind of surprised at her response instead of saying, oh my God, like that's great. Oh my goodness, I can't believe that you can do this. That's wonderful. It was again about her. So that was kind of like the start of, which was interesting when I think about it now, because being a year 3 of like community, of collaboration, it was also the start of, not really the start, because I had already kind of departed. Remember, I told you about the letter, my sister, there's things, people were falling away. Okay, relationships were falling away one by one over the years. And this friendship which I thought I would always have with her, it starts to affect me to the point where like it didn't seem healthy anymore. And I had been friends with her now for 20 years. So how could she not be in my life? I could not even envision that. Um, so now going through the end of 2019, I took a birthday trip to Chicago, and I had been wanting to go to Chicago for years and years. I had gone when, like I say, traveled when I was with my parents when I was young, but for many years I had wanted to go there on my own. So I said, I'm going to take a weekend birthday trip to Chicago, and that was at the end of the year. And I was also still trying to work through the details of renting space from this gentleman who had said he was going to open up a building for children um, to spend time after school, like activities and stuff like that. And he had asked me if I wanted to teach yoga to children. And I thought, oh, what a great opportunity that would be. But also, I would be able to rent space from him till I got going later on with my own separate studio to bring clientele in to do classes. So trying to collaborate with him, and this brought me kind of to the beginning of 2020. And again, I can't think of anything else major that happened in the beginning of 2020. But I know my clientele wasn't, without that space, which I was waiting for to open, I wasn't able to continue to bring in clientele the way I wanted to. And wasn't now making the money that I had hoped to, as far as, doing readings and healings, and also starting yoga classes. And was starting to kind of worry about my finances at that time, because I was kind of living off of my severance and had already invested a lot of money into this business that I had been building. Um, So I believe it was March, right? The beginning of March. when everything kind of started within the United States as far as the epidemic. And I'm trying to use the right words because I know YouTube will kind of, for some words that you use. But anyway, um, that started and everything shut down. So now I'm like really like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because I was looking forward to building my business in order to bring in money. Also, the cruise that we were supposed to go on in May eventually got canceled. And um, I remember we were able to get our money back, but I remember a lot of people were stuck on cruises at that time because people were getting sick on the cruise and they didn't want to bring the ships back into port. So it would spread. So we were like, oh my goodness, so thankful that, we had booked our cruise out later so that, we wouldn't be in that kind of situation. So things really, there was different situation. I'm sure everyone has their story, especially also being in New York. We lost a lot of people in the city, and I'm thankful. Like I was in Westchester County at that time, but it was really, really bad within the city. So I kind of had bunkered down in my apartment, you know, was continuing to take walks every day just to get exercise. But it became kind of dire at that point of kind of sitting now alone in my apartment and not having anyone with me. I was alone and um, now really being really worried about my finances. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also, if you would like to spend time with me talking about your own journey, there's a link below. I also have several courses on the Ascension journey, and you'll find that link below also. Okay, I'll see you next time.